And I said, okay, now I'm going to take a bigger risk. I'm going to run a business, right? And I went from making $150 an hour to 50,000 rupees a month.
Hey guys, it's Saheli, and today with me, I have a very special guest today. Today with me, I have Varun Mayya, and it so happens that his book Pajama Profit was one of the first books I read when I was starting my freelance journey. And today, I'm like speaking with him one on one, which is like wild for me. So thank you so much for agreeing to do this, Varun.
Likewise, I mean, I'm happy to be here, and I hope that my thoughts add value to whoever's like watching this.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. I know that I enjoy your content so much. And also, as someone who has been following you for 4 years, I have seen how your thought process and the way you run your businesses, all of that has evolved. I think
Yeah,
Pajama Profit, that was like very early on in your career. Right
yeah,
now, you talk in a wildly different way in your newsletter.
yeah.
So, all that being said, a quick introduction to Varun from my side. He was one of the youngest Indian entrepreneurs to raise funding. I think he raised funding at 19, you said?
Something
And
along that lines.
and that is crazy. He sold his company when he was, what age were you when you sold your first company?
22, 21, 22, something like that.
Oh my God, that is crazy. So you are my age. So yeah, doubting myself right now. And he's currently the co-founder at Avalon Labs,
Yeah,
and they are a wildly profitable company. He has made quite a few shifts in his career to get to where he is. He has freelanced for quite a long time for US clients. So that will be one of the major points of discussion today, because I
yeah,
know that majority of you watching this channel are freelancers. And we want to know more from you, Varun, about how can we tap into industries where we are more likely to be millionaires. Now,
yeah,
I know that every industry has money in it, but then there are some industries that are like easier to make money in than the others. So
yeah.
that those are the areas we'll talk about today. So yes, without any further ado, let's get started. And yeah, why don't you start by telling me about how you got into freelancing after, like, you were talented in multiple things. So why
Yeah.
freelancing, and why freelancing for US clients? How did that happen to you?
Yeah. So I think it started out because I think in college, like first or second year of college, I want to start a business. So I went to like two, three, and I was an engineer, right? I was a computer science engineer at Manipal. And I went to two, three of my friends and I said, hey, do you guys want to start a business with me? And we didn't have the slightest of clues as to what the business was going to be. We're just like, let's figure it out. So we went to the college. We said, hey, can you give us like one room on rent? Like they had like these special common rooms that nobody was using. So we said, can we use this? We got together and we started printing t-shirts. We said, we're going to run a
Mhm.
t-shirt business. So
Sizer.
Sizer, this is called Sizer. Right? It's my first ever
Yes.
business.
I
By the
know,
way,
I know.
Sizer was not a legally registered business. Just
Okay.
FYI, right? It was just like
Okay.
a name that we used to kind of, do stuff. And I think it's always important to have that brand, right, with whatever you do.
Hmm.
So we started Sizer. We put these people together, and we started working on. Um, we started working more and more on uh, putting out these t-shirts. I think we started with t-shirts that were class t-shirts, right? So for every section in class, like we were in the first year, so we had O section, right? And we in the back of O section we write that person's name. So the front would be an O, and the back would be that person's name, right? So
Hmm.
like branded jersey sort of t-shirts. And it took us some time to actually figure this out, because the first few prints that we pulled out like were terrible. Like the print was leaking and stuff, so we lost a lot of money there. And we did t-shirts for a bit. The problem with t-shirts was that it's very high effort, very low reward. To sell the t-shirt, you
Hmm.
need to go door to door knocking, saying, do you want this t-shirt? Most people will say no. Then you move to the next place and you knock, and then people will say no, and then finally one person will say yes. Then you got to actually print the t-shirt. Your margins are like 10-15 rupees. And the worst part is that after all of this, if one t-shirt fails or one person refunds the t-shirt, you've lost 350 bucks, right? Because it
Hmm.
used to cost about 300-350 bucks to make the t-shirt, right? So you've lost that
Yeah.
much money. So it's like you got to sell 30 t-shirts just to make up for one lost t-shirt. So we hated these unit economics. So we said, what's the way we can sit at home and gar bete paise banaye, right? By the way, my Hindi is poor to everyone's who's
Yeah.
listening to this. It's the worst Hindi possible. Uh, but yeah, we wanted to sit at home and make money, right? Like could sit in our hostel rooms and make money. We wanted something that was low effort but high reward. And being computer science engineers ourselves, we're like, let's use the internet. So I remember my mom actually telling me about this website called Odesk. Today it's called Upwork, but she's speaking about Odesk, and she said you should try. You should just go and apply, make a profile on Odesk. So I went. I made a profile. When people don't have any experience in life, they fill their CV with all sorts of random stuff, right? So that's what I did. Like I said I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, and then I started applying for jobs, or I started applying for gigs. And there was one from a Malaysian eye clinic, right? And you have to on Odesk. I don't know if you still have to do it, but that time you have to write a cover letter, right? So I went and put in a cover letter, and I said, "Boss, actually, I don't know how to do this, right? I'm still learning, but I'm happy to learn on the job, right? If you give me a chance." So I was very honest about it. And that honesty paid off because the people who saw it, or the guy who saw it, the Malaysian eye clinic doctor, whatever, loved me. And he said, "Come, we'll build this website together. You build it for us." It was $100 project. It took me 3 months to build. The client kept asking for more and more and more changes. And other people would get pissed off, right? Like if a client keeps asking for changes, but I didn't get pissed off because I'm learning this thing for the first time anyway. Somebody's paying me to learn this. Whereas if I go to Udemy or something, I'd have to pay to learn something, right? Here I'm being paid to learn new skills and actually practice them. So I did that. That was my first project. My second project was even better. My friends joined me. They also started freelancing. So Abhinav, who ended up becoming the head of design of Unacademy, right, was actually my co-founder there.
You're talking about Abhinav, who is the co-writer for the book, right?
Co-writer of Pajama Profit. So Abhinav Shikara. So he's the co-writer of the book. He was head of design at Unacademy. He now runs 10K designers. So again, everyone's had like long, illustrious careers, I guess. So I guess we all started doing freelancing pretty like seriously. And by the end of the fourth year, I was making like $150 an hour, right? We were making like a ridiculous amount of money because it turns out if you export quality software from India to the US and you do that through like a professional, like you're able to get on a call with the client. That time it was Skype, right? So if you're able to Skype with the client, show them what you're building, what you have, and then they're impressed with that and they hire you and you build a relationship with that client, and that client refers you to the next client. You end up building sort of a brand for yourself, right? Or at least a verifiable brand. People need not know you, but when introduced to you, you seem legit, right? And they're willing to give you a project. So once you get to that place, it was pretty easy for us to pull up like $150 in our projects. And we did that for like a year and a half until I got sick and tired and bored. And I said, okay, now I'm going to take a bigger risk. I'm going to run a business, right? And businesses are harder because you're trying to change something in the world, especially venture funded business. You're trying to change something in the world, and changing something in the world is very, very difficult. And we had to spend all our time, energy, effort to kind of do it. And I went from making $150 an hour to 50,000 rupees a month, right? That was my salary after I'd raised money, because I was like, rest of money has to go into marketing, hiring people, etc. I had no idea what I was doing, but that's a story for a different day. That's my freelance career in a nutshell, though.
Yeah, I get that. And I understand. Even I think most people don't want to get into the product space because there's a lot of risk involved, and freelancing, being a service-based business, is just easier to get into. So can I say it was kind of similar to you, similar to what happened with you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved the way you approached the clients, like or through Upwork that you said. Although Upwork today, it's not the best strategy anymore because of the. It's not easy. It's very saturated, and there's a lot of cut is taken. I'm sure you know that if you are getting. But even then, just that honesty that you spoke about, I want to know if over the years, does it pay more to be honest, or sometimes does it pay more to be a little dishonest?
Yeah, I think the word you're looking for is authenticity, right? As long as you're authentic, people will be able to tell. See, here's the thing, right? Somebody like me now, I've hired like 500 people in my career, right? I've interviewed like thousands and thousands. I would rather hire somebody who's authentic, right? Who's aware about what they're good at, what they're bad at, than like somebody who lies about, because it's very easy to tell when somebody's lying. It's like today, especially for me, if somebody's lying on their resume and says I can do this, and you actually get them on within, even if we hire them, they make the mistake of hiring them, in 2 days, I'll know that they're lying. Right. So I guess you will eventually be caught out, especially if you're trying to work at good companies, and only the good companies pay you well. Right. So I guess it's always better to be honest, right? Now there are like leeways you can take when you have a brand. Like Apple can say this is the best ever iPhone, right? Or Apple can say this is the best phone in the world, even though it may not be, right? Like technically,
Hmm.
you could argue about it, but I would say that's Apple's branding. So I guess once you get really big, then you can say whatever you want. You can make an ad with
Hmm.
Dhoni and make Dhoni fly through the air, or like Sachin Tendulkar make him fly through the air. That's obviously like Red Bull does it, right? Like Red Bull gives you wings. Um,
Hmm.
I guess that's the only thing that's more like fantasy creation that you do, right?
Hmm.
As you become a big brand. But I think
Hmm.
especially if it's you as an individual going and applying to companies, just be honest. Otherwise, you'll get caught. At some point, you'll get caught.
Hmm.
Right? The easiest
Hmm.
way to solve this thing of, oh, I need a project, I need to make money right now, just gain skills. Just spend the
Hmm.
time, become good at something, build projects. And I can guarantee you, let's say you're doing a digital skill and you're freelancing online. If you, let's say, have like three freelance or it doesn't have to be freelance. Let's say three design projects under your belt. You made three
Hmm.
Webflow websites. Maybe you made one app and you hosted it on Netlify. Whatever
Hmm.
segment of freelance you're in, um, and you had that on your portfolio on your website, and you were able to share that website. That's good enough. You don't need to be dishonest beyond that, I guess.
Hmm. All right. But how does a new freelancer navigate a situation like client asking them, have you worked in this niche before? But they haven't. How does
Yeah.
someone navigate a situation like maybe this is their first project? And oftentimes, actually, people are not very happy to. So, what do you think is the best way to navigate that? Because, of course, sometimes there are clients like yours, right? The Malaysian client you were talking about, they're happy to
Yeah.
take on a newbie because
Yeah.
newbies also have their own benefits. No one
Yeah.
is not going to work for $100 for 3 months. But how does someone stay honest, stay authentic, but also make sure that they back the project?
Yeah, I think the solution is to be okay with taking $100 over 3 months project. I know it sounds crazy, but I'll tell you, I'll tell you this crazy thing, right? Like I never had to start a YouTube. I didn't have to do it.
Hmm.
I didn't have to start a YouTube account, but I started
Hmm.
a YouTube account. I started from 0 followers, 0 subscribers, whatever it is. I didn't have to do that, but I started from scratch. For the first, God knows, 1 year, I was talking to like 5,000 people on YouTube, right? Which is like 30 people watching the average video, right? So you have to go through that first. Anything new that you try and do, suppose you try and now say that, okay, I'm going to be a fintech consultant and you know nothing about
Hmm.
fintech. What do you expect? You read 2 books and then people are going to hire you and pay you millions of dollars? Absolutely not,
Hmm.
right? People hire people for experience. People hire people for insight, right? So today I'm putting together a YouTube team. I'm hiring people who've done YouTube before because I'm like, you have the insight. I don't have to reinstall this knowledge inside you. We also hire like fresh people who are like, I'm willing to learn, I'm willing to hustle, but at much lower prices than we would hire, let's say, somebody who already knows YouTube. Right. So
Hmm.
obviously, if you come in with the experience, you get paid more. If you don't come in the experience, it's always okay to put up the flag, say, hey, I'm a high potential candidate. Here's why. Here's what I've done in the past. I'm willing to learn this new field.
Hmm.
Like I'll give you an example. If
Hmm.
I were to go and get a job today, I wouldn't. But let's say I would to go and get a job. The one place I'd go get a job was OpenAI. Would be OpenAI. I know nothing about how OpenAI does things. I know the general. I know how artificial intelligence works at the base level. I'm a computer programmer. I can figure it out. But OpenAI is not going to hire me as I am today, despite the fact that I'm CEO and whatnot. Right? My skill set as a CEO is very different from skill set of a programmer who works at OpenAI. But I'd be willing to
Hmm.
go there and I'd be willing to learn and I'd be willing to take like a zero salary if necessary. So I'm like, I want to learn. I want to because I think this is the future and I would like to learn how you guys have built GPT-3. Right? It's an
Hmm.
honor for me to go there and learn that. Right? So I feel a lot of people today just want to make money, but don't come in with the greatest skill set. Right?
Hmm.
So
True. True. And especially in freelancing, it's an unregulated industry. There's no way to gauge that, okay, are you good? Are you really good enough?
yeah,
So
there's no way in any
how
industry to gauge. By the way, you can't tell.
uh-huh.
It's hard to tell in any industry whether you're good or not.
Okay. Then how does one make sure that at least they are perceived in a way that they are making a higher income than most other people? How do I
Yeah.
make sure that I am perceived like that by my clients? Or how do
Yeah.
the people watching this make sure that perception is at least worth the money that they are aiming for?
Yeah, I think this is a negotiation problem. I'll tell you what I mean, right?
Hmm.
Nawal had this great tweet where he said, in a negotiation, the person who cares less wins.
Hmm.
That's the
Oh
truth, right?
wow.
And I'll tell you
Yeah.
Abhinav Chikara's pitch around this, right? Abhinav Chikara was at a point where, like, I had stopped freelancing. I ran a company and whatnot, but Abhinav was still freelancing when I started JobSpire. Um, and Abhinav was getting like 30 projects a week. 30 projects a week. Some of those projects were only willing to pay Abhinav $10 an hour. Okay. But Abhinav was getting so many projects where he was like, I'm not going to do the $10 an hour ones. I'm only going to take the ones that are paying me well. So he goes to the $10 one an hour ones and he says, bro, my minimum price is $100 an hour. I don't even want to talk to you until then. That's it. You can afford to lose the projects that can't pay you as much as you think, as what you think you're worth. And people think this deal flow, like you can't get 100 projects a week or something like that. Absolutely not true, right? Go to any top influencer today in India. Let's say somebody with 1 million followers. Take even somebody like me, right? With 100K followers. I'm getting so many like inbound deals per month that I can choose to say no to somebody who comes in and says, like, there's this brand recently who said, oh, do a reel for us, we'll pay you $6,000. I was like, go to hell. this is how much I charge, right? Even though I typically don't do too many like inbound deals, the reason I have the ability to say yes to like very well paying deals is because I have the ability, or the reason I can say no to the poor paying deals is because I can say yes to the well paying deals, right? And I have enough of those. So I guess just work on amplifying the amount of deal flow you get, and amplifying the amount of deal flow you get is a function of you gaining some leverage. Either you have a brand, people know you. You guys know that Ryan guy from Flux Academy?
Yeah, oh, of course, Ryan Robinson.
I don't know what his name is, right? So
yeah, I do.
I think it was, I don't remember his name, but I know Flux Academy. So if I had to like wager on the number of Webflow projects Ryan would be getting per month, it would be in the hundreds or thousands, right?
Or is it Rand Segal?
Sorry, it's Rand Segal. Sorry.
Rand Segal. Sorry. Oh my God, I feel so shit. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, my bad. Yeah, so Rand Segal, I'd wager that his Webflow agency would get like hundreds of or thousands of inbound requests per month. Because I know my wife is a Webflow designer, and she gets like 30-40 projects a month simply because she's out there on Twitter talking about Webflow. She's out there on LinkedIn talking about Webflow. So you also have to do a little bit of branding for yourself, just talking about your craft and being like super niche about your craft. See, the problem is when a freelancer, let's say if you're good at Figma, if you as somebody who's good at Figma starts talking about general stuff in the world because you want views, that's when you screw it up. Because you don't realize that the people who want to give you a Webflow project don't care how many views you get, especially or don't care how many views you get when you post random stuff. Like if I go out and start posting very random things, like I start posting comedy content, let's say, right? Then I actually devalue my brand. So you would rather have 20 high quality focused views of Webflow clients than it would you having 100,000 random people watching your videos, right? Your Figma videos. So the mistake that a lot of people do is that in the process of them teaching Figma or whatever it is that, or Photoshop or whatever it is they're teaching, they started becoming influencers. Like there's this one guy called Tech Lead on YouTube who he started out putting out coding content, and now he's putting out content like why my wife left me and stuff like that. Totally different.
That Google guy.
The Google guy, yeah.
Yeah, oh my God, he's such a shitty guy right now.
Yeah, so he started putting out random stuff that's not even related to his craft, right? So if somebody wants to hire him, they're like, oh, I respect the fact that he has a brand on, his core coding concepts. Now he's talking about something random. Now I don't care, right? So people kind of dilute people don't understand that if you stay niche and if you get high quality niche views in your segment, that's far more valuable than you going broad, right? But in this concept of views, or in this perception that views are the only thing that matter, people like lose out.
That is 100% true. If we talk about people finding you and people asking you to, people wanting to hire you, what are in your opinion some of those niches where people on an average make much more, like on an average, a web designer makes much more money than a video editor, unless like the video editor has a very specific type of video editing style, which is real. Okay. Yeah. Because of very obvious reasons. So what are some skills or what are some industries which a new freelancer who is starting from scratch should try to learn? Yeah, should try to learn about. Because, they have to learn anyway. I'd rather learn something that has higher potential. What are those niches? What are those skills in your opinion?
Yeah, I think this is straightforward, right? Just learn to code. Like coding. If you learn to, I know it's hard, obviously, and that's the main reason you make money, right? Because supply demand economics. Now, if everyone could do something, I'll give you the example of, let's say, community software, right? So we have a community software. We run community software, right? if you went 20 years ago and you tried to buy the most premium community software in the market, it would cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars. But today, a community software will cost you like $50 to $100 a month. Good community software costs you $50,000 to $100,000 a month to get started, right? Why this drop? If there's just one player in the market, this drop would never have happened because they'd control price, right? There'd be a monopoly. But the more people in the market doing the same thing or offering the same solution, the more it gets commoditized. Today, like there's the person in my house who made a joke. Like if you throw a stone across, this window from this window that you see there, you'll find 3 influencer marketing agencies, right? So it gets commoditized. The more people doing something, the cheaper it gets, right? The lower their margins. So now influencer marketing agencies have to fight with each other for the same margin, for margins. One influencer marketing agency comes in and says, I'll do 10%. Next guy says, I'll do 5%. They eat at each other's margins. It's a shitty business, right? Eventually it goes down to zero. And then you say, I'll do value add. I mean, you play a different game, essentially. But the point I'm trying to tell you is with code, it's hard. There's a barrier of entry. And if you can cross that barrier and get good, you should be happy in the fact that less than 4% of actual coders in India can actually write good code. They're like, maybe if I had to give an accurate number, there may be 1 lakh decent coders in India. Just 1 lakh, right? For a workforce, actually, even that's like, I think pushing it. Maybe they're like 10,000 good coders, right? Even though there are lots more people in the workforce, most of them can't actually code, right? Even though the software engineers is probably sitting on the bench in Infosys somewhere, right? So you are so far above everybody else, right? And other people, just because of that feeling that most people in the audience are getting that, oh shit, I have to code. Just because of that feeling, that's keeping you behind the financial curtain.
I reacted that way just now.
Yeah, it's keeping. So there are ways to solve that, right? Even if you don't want to code, if you want to do something that's commoditized, there's ways around it, right? Like for example, phones are commoditized today. So many brands creating phones, but an iPhone still costs you 1.5 lakhs. Why? You can be in a commoditized market as long as you have a great brand, right? But not everyone can. I think there can only be like 2-3 brands in a market, right? Maybe if you're talking about individuals, there can be like 100 known brands. Like name 30 top Webflow guys, Webflow experts.
Exactly.
Right? You see the challenge.
I think of Rand Siegel only.
Yeah. Name top 5 Indian designers. Again, you could 3-4 names. The people who've done like heavy branding activity, you probably know their names, right? So it's tough. But whereas with code, the skill is the barrier of entry, right? So if you come in and you say, I'm a developer, and you can actually prove that, software engineer, and you can actually prove that, or at least prove that you have a minimum barrier of skills, you have plenty of places where you can work because people want you. Supply, demand. There is huge demand for you. There's very low quality supply, so people are coming to you. And the feeling that telling people, oh, you should learn how to code, the feeling that it evokes in people is the reason why the supply demand economics exist here. It's the reason why supply is constrained, because most people just feel icky when they say, oh, I have to learn how to code and it's complicated. Many people try, by the way. Many people try opening a coding, let's say opening Sublime Text, and they say, okay, today I will do a little bit of C++, right? Or today I will do a little bit of JavaScript. They do it for 5 seconds. They follow the basic tutorial and then like, this is too hard, and they give up. Right? If you can push through that. And that's why I always recommend people, if you're starting with coding, learn game design or learn game development, right? Because it's just easier. It's much easier to learn the object-oriented programming starting with a game engine, because all the concepts that might be abstract, now you can see them in your game. Right? If you're talking about the class, if you're talking about a class called chair, you can see it in your game, right? So I always recommend they start with that. Now, let's assume you can't find a skill with a high barrier of entry, right? Either coding or data science or one of those. Let's talk about skills with a lower barrier of entry. Like people think today design is a defensible skill. I think design is one of the first skills in India and across to be commoditized. In the next 5 years, design is going to be commoditized. The designers who are designers are switching to product managers, right? Something where you need to use your brains and actually coordinate people and stuff, which a computer can't easily do. But normal designers are going out of fashion, right? Even if you're a UI UX designer, because most founders or business owners are just like, let's use a template. And there are plenty of templates. Now, there's some companies like, let's say an Apple. If Apple wants to create some new interface, they're not going to use a template. They're going to make it from scratch. But they are not going to hire you. They're going to go after the best designers in whatever their location. Right? So it's like limited to Cupertino, and they will get designers from there. They might, if you're a great designer from Germany, they'll fly you over to Cupertino. Right? So I guess you have to build a great brand for yourself. You might like, I think the Rich Dad Poor Dad guy, Robert Kiyosaki, once said this, right? I'm not the best. It doesn't say on the book that I'm the best author. It says I'm the best selling author. Right? So he's like, there's a difference. You can't really say who's the best. You can't take two coders and say this guy's better than this guy. There's no way to measure them. They might be skilled at different coding languages. They might be totally different in their approaches to doing things. But it's the brand that counts. It's the brand that matters. Right? So I guess building a great brand is something that's non-negotiable if you're doing some skill with a low barrier. But at the same time, I think there can be like 10, 20 people in the space who are good. And by the way, just so you know, in all the top companies in India, let's say startups in India, everyone knows everyone. Like a VP of design, let's say a VP of product at Byju's will know all the other VP products in other funded startups. They just know each other. So it's a very small circle. Either you're in it or you're not. And getting in it is like a pain in the ass itself.
I totally understand. So when you talk about, just building a brand for yourself, so automatically we come to a Hindi proverb, right? Jo dikhta hai, wo bikta hai, which comes down to the point that we were talking about right before this, distribution. Okay, you had a lot of interesting things to talk about why distribution is so important. So would you like to shed some light on how a newbie freelancer or how someone who's trying to make it to the 6-figure level or 7-figure level for that matter can create content so that it reaches their ideal audience through what kind of distribution channels they should target and how basically they should approach, their branding strategy?
Yeah. So when I started a YouTube channel, right? And when I do YouTube, a lot of people comment, like random people who don't know me are like, why is the CEO doing YouTube? Agar CEO hai aur paisa bana raha hai, to YouTube kyun kar raha hai? And what they don't realize is YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, what else? TikTok I know is not available in India, but whatever. These are the 5 gateways to visibility. You can't gain visibility outside anywhere. You cannot, right? It's not possible. You can't post a blog. People won't just like randomly stumble upon your blog. But there was a time in the internet, many, many, many years ago, where this could happen.
Yeah.
You post a link on Reddit and then suddenly you have 1,000 hits on the blog an hour, right? Hacker News still works the same way. Product Hunt still works the same way. But Product Hunt at this point now requires your distribution. So the reason I'm doing YouTube is because I realized that distribution is becoming the like I told you, supply demand economics. Distribution is becoming constrained, right? And the demand for distribution, people who want eyeballs because they're not able to get eyeballs themselves. Let's say a brand or like any business who wants eyeballs, they can't get it themselves, and you become the limiting factor, which is the best place to be, right? If I'm the limiting factor to distribution, that's awesome. Where I don't want to be is in a place where I have to depend on somebody else for distribution. Like suppose I had 0 followers. Okay. Then Saheli had, and if suppose I wanted attention to say, let's say a new product I was selling. Let's say I was selling this beard oil. I don't have a beard, but let's say I was selling this beard oil, right? And I want attention to the product. I'm an entrepreneur. I'd have to come to you and say, Saheli, please take me on your channel, right? So I can talk about my beard oil. I mean, we don't sell beard oil, guys. I'm just giving you all an example.
I cannot sell beard oil either.
No, I'm just saying, right? I'd have to request people like you to give an ad slot, essentially, to what I'm selling, right? And a lot of CEOs have gotten fed up of that. So you'll see a lot of CEOs these days collaborating with like other influencers, trying to be on their channels, trying to get that screen time. Because today, like, I feel that people follow people. Nobody follows brands. So 2-3 years later, you might forget the brand that I work for a brand called Avalon. People will forget about that, right? Eventually, they'll remember Varun, right? So I carry that brand potential in my bucket rather than Avalon's bucket, right? So because I know that's going to happen, I'm building distribution by myself, right? Now, if a CEO of a company that builds technology that doesn't have to necessarily build distribution, we can just rely on ads, right? Ads are getting more and more expensive, but and obviously that's why we're moving to distribution, but or moving to social media. But let's say if I had to rely on ads, if somebody like me is moving towards YouTube and trying to create content, why aren't you? I'm not talking about you, but why aren't the people like watching
Got
this?
it. Yeah.
The problem, and to answer your question of how should you build distribution, the problem is you're trying to build distribution the way Gary Minati is, or you're trying to build distribution the way techno gamers is, right? You're trying to build massy distribution. You're saying, ki, boss, I'm going to take this camera and I'm going to talk about what happened in the world today. I'm going to talk about Elon Musk takes over Twitter. That's what I'm going to do, right? Whereas the kind of distribution you should be building, especially let's say if you're a coder or a designer, let's say you're a designer and design is going to get commoditized in the next 5 years. The tools like DALI coming out, and very soon you'll be able to feed DALI UI screens, right? Direct Figma to DALI, there'll be some exporter, and DALI will be able to generate UI screens for a founder just based on what he writes, right? Founders are almost every good founder is a great writer. Right. So as long as they can communicate to a machine what they want, the machine will spit it out to them. Right. So you'll become useless, but the best ones always have a job. Right. So the best, if you want to be the best one, you have to create content around design. You can't create content around, what is happening in China and India and what is Vladimir Putin thinking. You're trying to get views. You have to get relevant niche views, and you have to have a loyal, small audience, but loyal audience who cares about what you're dishing out. Right. Who's relevant to your craft. People have forgotten the art of that in the era of just gaining views, right? So that's how I do it. And also remember, YouTube's very old in India. It's like 10 years old or something like that, if I'm not wrong. Everything that you had to see on YouTube has already existed. Everything's all that you wanted to see on YouTube has already, somebody's done some form of it, right? So the solution is to do that in a new and novel way. There's this one channel where they were selling hot sauce, right? A business where they're selling hot sauce. So what they do is they do a podcast, and in the podcast, they had a range of hot sauce from mild to spicy, right? Like 7 or 8 bottles of hot sauce. They'd get people. For example, they got Gary Vee. They made Gary Vee sit opposite, and they said, okay, let's start talking to you about your life. You start with the mild hot sauce. They'll ask him to starve for the entire day, and then they start like feeding him sauce plus burger, chicken, or whatever. Right? That was their format. That was something new. It's a podcast. It's a traditional podcast, because a podcast is like two people talking about their lives or whatever, but with this hot sauce element into it. So by the end, Gary is like, oh yeah, whatever, right? So it's different. The audience wants to see something different.
They're selling the hot sauce.
Yeah, they're selling the hot sauce.
Content marketing made.
It's content marketing. Everyone now knows about hot sauce. The hot sauce is their unique format. So even the podcast guests will be like, oh, I'd love to come here. This is like super exciting, right? Because everyone, dude, like there are 100 people a week that call me for a podcast. It's so boring. It's like, what? I'm going to ask me the same 10 questions. I'm bored of answering the same 10 questions. Now, if you have distribution, if you have like 10 million followers, I'll do a video with you, right? Because there's value to me. Otherwise, there's no value to me. I will disproportionately make your channel bigger. If you're, let's say, somebody with 2 followers, right? So something like this is a new format. I'd be like, wow, that's exciting. I'd love to do that. Right. So, and not just me, this everyone, right? Like all the top YouTubers, creators, entrepreneurs would love to give you time if you can make it exciting and interesting for them. Right? Give them something, right? At best, an experience for that half an hour. They don't even expect, they're not even shallow enough to expect just views or like money. Just make their life exciting. Most people ask them the same 10 boring questions. Anyway, so if you're a designer, like, I don't know, paint the other, I don't know, like create some new format, right? And get views on the format. That's why Reels really created this era of like people dancing and like, going through those points, because it's new. People have not seen it before. Guess what now? It's burnt out. That format's done. Too many people are doing it, right? Because the minute you start doing it, enough people start doing it, right? So I feel that you need to find your own content format, a format that lasts. Do it in a way where it's visible. That's your brand. As long as you have some amount of followers and watchers, that's good enough. You just need, them to be super niche, not random people, and take that to a brand tomorrow when you want to go apply to a job. That should be good enough. You don't even need too much. You just need like maybe 500,000 subscribers, right? And be super niche.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the things that you were talking about regarding, as you grow more, you get more opportunities. I know that you have grown exponentially over the last few years. And I think one of the things that it has brought you, as I've heard before, is a lot of access to people, to opportunities, and to places that you probably did not think about maybe 10 years ago. So a more personal question now. How does that feel like? Like when you sit with someone, like I see you meet all these amazing people who I would love to meet someday too. Uh, how does that feel like now? And how has that evolved for you, that whole journey?
I guess like I'll give you so I met Nas recently, right? I met Nas Daily recently.
That's who I was talking about.
Yeah. So Nas said this very interesting thing. He's like, the Nas brand is 4 years old, 6 years old. Sorry, like the Nas brand is 6 years old. There's one thing that the Nas brand guarantees you: the first meeting is always on the house. No matter who it is, if it's Bill Gates, Nas will get the first meeting. It may not be a vloggable meeting. You can't actually vlog that, but you'll get a meeting. If you have something interesting, and obviously Nas knows that he can't just like, text Bill Gates and say, hey, just do a meeting with me on Skype. He has to have something of value. He has to make it worth Bill Gates' time, right? Either through distribution or whatever, right? You have some value card, value access. So the way I adapt that is, some people might not take a meeting with Varun Mayya, the content creator. Like large content creators might not take a meeting with me, who's a smaller content creator, but they'll definitely take a meeting with me, the entrepreneur, because they know I can give them money, right? Advertise something. Whereas entrepreneurs, maybe a Tata might not take a meeting with me, right? But the entrepreneur, but he might take a meeting with me, the content creator, if I can tell a great story about him, right? So I use these, like I have 2 access cards, and most freelancers also have 2 access cards. You got your skill, like you got your skill saying, okay, I'm a great marketing person, I'm a great digital marketer, and then you're like, I got a great YouTube channel. Two access cards. So the
Whatever
first,
you want.
yeah, so the first one doesn't fit, great, try the other one, right? So it's the same with me. And I guess, like for example, with Nas, he would never take a meeting with me, the content creator, never. But he took a meeting with me, the entrepreneur. We were talking about something completely different, right? We were talking business. So and obviously, because I have a phone, I can just like, take a video, right? So I guess you have to have something that's valuable to the other person, right? And I think that for me, how that access has changed, it's not changed much at all, because I've gotten to a point where now I understand everybody, right? They all have their own insecurities, they all have their own problems, they're all struggling with their own thing, right? So it's always like a value exchange. I'm like, what can I give them that'll make their lives easier? What can I take from them that will make my life easier? That's it.
All right, that's a very, very nice answer. But that also brings me to the fact that a very popular advice is that you stick to your lane. But we
Yeah.
are talking about being both a creator and an entrepreneur, being both a creator and a freelancer. And honestly, that works out the best. So
Yeah.
when do you think this idea of stick to your lane, jack of all trades, master of none, when do you think that gets outdated?
I think sticking to your lane works when you're massive. Like if you're Tiger Global or Cotu, Tiger Global does not need to have a social media presence. Tiger Global is one of the biggest VCs in India, actually across the world, right? They have like some $100 billion in annual assets under management, right? If you're Cotu, which is another big, massive VC, if you are Tata, right? He himself does not, I mean, doesn't need to use his, Twitter every day. If you're Ratan Tata. So when you become like super massive, you don't need to be a creator, because press does the job for you, right? I know it sounds weird, but like everything you say, the press will cover. Like Elon Musk today, he doesn't need to go out and make a YouTube video and say, here's what I'm thinking. He just posts a tweet, blah, 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 blah. There'll be 100 articles about it the next day. Stocks will crash the next day, right? So I think Elon Musk is the only one at that scale who's also like focused on being an influencer on Twitter.
Creator.
Right? And you can see that he's creating more waves than the average, let's say, large businessman. Right? So there's still value there, but you don't need to do it, because the amplification mechanism is news, right? And news is always going to exist, right? Worst case, if news dies, creators like us will make videos about that. So there's that amplification already kind of inbuilt into the system. That's the only exception.
Exactly.
Otherwise, all of us, everyone will have to do both things. The worst thing is to be really good at your craft. The worst thing is to be really good at your craft, but be forgotten.
Oh, shit.
I've met like lots of great engineers who are very good. Never put up a YouTube video, don't even have a great LinkedIn. Very, very good, right? And would never be good at selling themselves, or like, putting themselves up on social media and talking about what they've done. And because of that, they make less money than everybody else. And they always complain about it. They're like, I'm better than that guy. Why am I making less money? Well, it's because you're not selling yourself. And selling is sort of like, if you try to convince a young kid to eat, what are you doing? You're in sales. You're like, broccoli khao. You're selling it to the child, right? You're saying, please eat this broccoli, and you can't just like shove it into the child's mouth. You have to learn how to sell. You have to say it sweetly. You have to say it in a way the child understands. You have to wrap it in like whatever chocolate. You have to put chocolate around broccoli. I know that sounds crazy, but you guys
get those sentiments.
Yeah. So I guess it's that. And most people are allergic to that because India is a country where it's an anti-sales country. It's like sales kiya to there's something wrong with you, right? If you're doing sales, you're a bad person, which is stupid, right? Like our entire economy depends on sales. If everyone in India stopped selling, by the end of the week, you'd be broke, out on the street. You have no electric, all hell would break loose if everyone stopped selling in India. So it's good that people like you don't run the country. I mean, the people who believe that selling is a bad thing. And for the people that understand the value of sales, you use it as a tool. Use it as an access card, like any other access card.
Exactly. I think that mindset has been even more, is even higher in the edtech industry, because with these BDA roles, there's not a lot of respect for these roles. Like I've had a couple of friends getting into these roles and they're like, shit, I have to sell. And it's like the worst thing is happening to them. Also, like the package is like much higher than some of the roles, but they're like, oh my God, I have to do sales now. And it's like,
but I'll tell you one thing, like one interlude there, right? If you're sitting in like, let's say Byju's and you're working as a sales rep at Byju's, that might be a horrible job, right? Not because Byju's would be horrible, but you're selling for somebody else. You're selling somebody else's product, right? Even though Byju's might be a good company or might become a good company, you're still selling somebody else's thing. Let's say you're working let's say you're selling, I don't know, tube lights. It's not yours, but when it's your business or your brand that you're selling, it's always more fun, right? You have to learn to fall in love with selling the brand or the business that you've built. That's why I can never be anything other than an entrepreneur. The only reason I take a job is to learn, but I'd never do that. Right? This is a hypothetical.
Agreed. My last question is regarding sales itself, because I think this was a very nice conversation with a nice flow, and the best way we can end it is through a conversion. How does one become sellable, or how does a product become sellable? Both, like because you have the experience of both selling your skills, selling your products, the companies that you've built. So how does that differ, and how does one sell in the best way possible? Because after all, that's what we are all here for. We are here to make a lot of money in the future, most probably near future, and of course it will lie on sales. So how does that happen? Sellability.
So I think I'll start with products versus people, right? I think products are much harder to sell, like 1,000 times harder to sell. Like the chance of me, if I ran an agency tomorrow, which I wouldn't, I'd rather jump off a bridge than run an agency. But if I ran an agency tomorrow, I would be able to make more money doing that than if you asked me to build a new product tomorrow. And here I would make like probably 100 times more money on the agency with 100 times more stress, right? But again, money is not everything. That's why I don't do that. Products are much harder to crack, because products have to give utility without human intervention. Right? When you sell a product, people have to be able to use that product, whether it's a shaving cream or whether it's a software that we sell, whatever it is, without human intervention, without us throwing humans at the problem. That's very hard to do, because a lot of people want assistance and they feel, why am I paying for something that's purely, online and software, right? And again, the commoditization, right? If it's easy for us to build, it's easy for other people to build. And you never know, like you can't easily codify what people want directly through a product, right? Because Urban Clap is a product, but the asset being sold is still human time. You're still selling like a plumber's time, right? So that's why those products are easier. Those are marketplaces. They're slightly easier. Upwork, for example, is slightly easier. The job is just connection, right? Those are easier products, whereas us, we're like a proper SaaS, like software. Software has to work, right? And the software has to have high enough utility for you. When it comes to selling people, it's far easier. People are anyway looking for somebody. You say, okay, you're looking for a developer. I have a developer. It's like it's rerouting of something that they were already seeking. Whereas in the first part, there's lots of education to do, right? That's why it's easier to build a product in a market that already exists instead of making a new market. Right? Now, how do you sell yourself? It's very simple. Tell a story. right? You tell a story as to, you put the user or the customer in the center of the story. Like, you're the hero of the story. This is your story. It's called the hero's arc, right?
Yes, yes,
First,
copy.
you first struggle with something. I mean, you struggle with something, then somebody helps you out, which is going to be us. We're going to be the sage that helps you out with our product. And then you become better. You have some outcome in life. Maybe you win the arc, and then you pass it on to the next person, right? A lot of people while selling feel like they are the hero. May hero who, I will solve all your problems. It's not that. It's like they have a problem. You're coming in, you're helping them solve the problem. You make them feel like the hero. They are the hero. Like, have you seen The Boys, the TV show on
No, no, I have
Amazon
not. No,
Prime? So
no,
there's
no,
a
I have not.
superhero in the Boys called Homelander, and he keeps doing this thing, right? He keeps like clapping, and he goes to random people like, "You guys are the real heroes," right? But that's what works. That's how selling works, right? And you have to learn how to get yourself out of the picture. You are not the important part of the picture when you're selling. You are the asset that somebody uses to gain help. They are the heroes. That's the difference, right? And obviously, to do all this, to tell that story, you need to be great at communication. You need to be able to write well. You need to be able to speak well, right? These are soft skills that you build that everyone just ignores. But you can't ignore it any longer, because if you've ignored it, I can guarantee that 10 other designers who have not ignored it, and they're going to win. Right? That's the problem.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think one of the things that I used to ignore a lot was networking, because I'm an introvert.
Yeah.
And then like this year I realized, okay, this is not going to work out this way.
Yeah.
I mean,
but also, Saheli, when you have leverage, when you have followers, it's easy for you to network. Right? If you don't have followers, it's hard, because what value do you add to, let's say, a large creator or a large entrepreneur? Nothing. Right? If you come with value, you will gain value in exchange. If you do not come with value, you're useless, right, to the other person. The best solution to for people who want to network at the, if you're at the bottom of the food chain and just starting, network with your peers. That's why you'll see like people who are aggressive career climbers will start with a circle. 2 years later, they'll have a completely different circle. 2 years later, they'll have a completely different circle, because they're outgrowing their peers really fast, right? And you need to be playing that game. And you still have friends. I mean, the people you start with, they can still be your friends, but they might not be a professional circle. Because there's no point, like if your friends, like 5 of your friends are stoners, it's okay to be friends with them, but you can't expect them to grow and reach the levels that you have that ambition to grow with if they're exactly like that.
And you have been through this process already.
Yeah, I've lost a lot of friends along the way. I'm still friends with them, but I mean, they will not be part of my professional journey. Like, I wouldn't call them up and say, "Hey, I'm starting this new thing. Do you want to like be a part of this?" Never do that. Right? Whereas I'm more likely to call somebody I know in the ecosystem. Like if I'm doing something new, I'm more likely to call you if it's in your domain and say, "Hey, I'm doing this. Do you want to like team up on? Do you want to team up on this?" Because you know it. Like that, like I said, even when I'm hiring people, it's like if somebody knows something, I'm just like, okay, it's much easier to work with this person because this person gets it. Right. So yeah, I mean, be valuable enough, I guess, to the other person, and that solves half the problems.
Yeah, I think the last insight that you gave on like just networking when you're getting started, that's actually very helpful, because I do get this question a lot that I have no friends, I'm just starting off.
Just go to Twitter. Just go to Twitter. I'm telling you, there are like 100 people who are just struggling, trying to pick up, and they all have like 2,000, 3,000 followers, some of them 500. DM them. Say, "Bro, I want to do a podcast with you. You're inspirational to me." You might think nobody wants to listen to the story of somebody with 2,000 followers. Well, you never know, right? And you give them that limelight. You give them that visibility to your friends. That's so big for them, right? And you make a friend. You make a permanent friend. Like when Raj Shamani goes or Ranveer goes and starts doing podcasts with random people, he's making networks as well. He's building a network alongside that. People think a podcast is like one relationship and then it ends. It's not like that, right? So
yeah, no, I agree. And especially Twitter and LinkedIn, like if you just leave comments on top influencers, you get visible in their network very easily, because
and they recognize
it's much easier.
And one tip there is, don't keep changing your DP, right? Because Twitter runs on DP. Like, I recognize the people who constantly engage with me. I know your DPs. Even if you have like one follower and you've been replying on every one of my posts, I know who you are, right? And I'm more likely to respond to you if you say, hey, I want to help you with this. If I put up a job posting tomorrow, or if I put up a freelance posting tomorrow, I'm much more likely to respond to you. But if you change your DP, you lose that advantage, because people, we are visual creatures, right? So
Yeah, true. True. I agree with that. Especially like nowadays with like more poppy PDPs,
yeah,
it's actually very
yeah, and
very hard to recognize.
don't do like anime DPs and stuff, because there's 100 people with anime DPs, right? You lose a brand. In fact, if you put a DP of Naruto, you're increasing Naruto's brand. Your brand is dying, right? So go out, take a good picture of yourself. It's not hard. Most phones today can take decent pictures. Touch it up a little bit, put it on Twitter, and never change it ever,
Okay.
right? Until you start growing a beard. Like many of you are young, but once you start growing a beard, or you become older as a as a woman, then you change, right? And after, I think, the age of 25, everyone looks the same forever until they go. Then the next thing is when you start growing like white hair.
Yeah. By the way, talking about this DP thing that you were talking about, something really funny happened in my academy that I really want to tell you about. There's someone in my academy who is a die-hard fan of yours, and his DP is your photo. Okay.
Nice.
It's one of your very popular photos where you're like looking sideways, your background, like it is your
Yeah.
probably your Instagram DP.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of your like the images of Varun Mayya.
Yeah.
And the first time I saw it, I was like, I of course the name was not showing. I was like, okay, what is happening? Why is when I said, then I realized it's his DP. So it's like really funny, but I don't know the person's name because they come like that with a random name, and they're like academy students. So yes, branding is very important. Like, but this one I wanted to mention it because this is your fan doing this. So I hope that they watch this because of course they're a diehard fan and they'll change that DP to theirs.
Yeah, and I think this is the thing, right? Like you told me in the beginning that Upwork, which was formerly called Odesk, it's become noisy now. There are too many people there, right? And it's hard for you to get projects, and the cut is whatever. I always believe you need to start on new platforms. Like TikTok gave so many people new opportunities. Reels is giving new people new opportunities. Right now, YouTube is pushing shorts. It's a new opportunity. Similarly, I think the best opportunity right now for smart people is Twitter. LinkedIn is over. It's noisy. All the kachra has come there, right? But Twitter has very small audience. Like I think they're like, if I had to guess, they're like 5 crore, 10 crore active people on Twitter in India. That's it. Right? Probably even lesser. If I had to be very pessimistic, I'd say there are only 1 crore real active people on Twitter in India. Right? This doesn't mean accounts created. This is just like people who are active using it on a monthly basis. That's a small place. You can make your brand in that small place, but it requires hard work from your end and ambition to get somewhere.
And a lot of like condensing your thoughts into small. I think that is one skill that we need to learn: how to communicate ideas in the least number of words. I think we are moving towards more and more of short form content anyway. So that has become a challenge for sure. Thank you so much for all the things that you've shared today with me, Varun. I'm a lot of things are very new to me, especially like today. I think the first thing I'm going to Google is where to get started with coding. Yeah. That's the first thing I'm going to do. And I'm sure like there was some things more relevant to some of the beginners here, but even I could learn so much from you. This is wildly different from any other guest that I've had on this channel, especially because you're more in the development side and the entrepreneurship side of things. But even then, this has been like such an insightful podcast. So many things I have learned from you. Thank you so much for taking all the time to do this and, just being who you are, creating the content you do. Because I don't think if you had not written Pajama Profits, I would have pitched to one of the clients I pitched to, because it happened directly as like, you read a book, you're motivated, you're like, okay,
let's do this now.
I see this Facebook ad, I'll ask them that if they need me. So that's how it happened. So I'm very grateful for whatever you do for like a really, really long time. So it's like absolutely amazing. I talked about access, right? So it's like I'm at that stage right now. I get to meet the people like I have been idolizing for so long. So it's been like absolutely amazing talking to you. I've been like fangirling this whole while, if you didn't know that already. So thank you very much for doing this with me.
Likewise, Saheli, I had a blast. Always love talking about my freelance are my roots, right? Like I guess now it's like entrepreneurship, but one of the things I'll leave the audience with this, right? One of the things in my head that gives me ultimate life and job and career security is that if all goes to shit, if I get sued tomorrow, my entire bank account goes to zero, I lose my job, market hits, company dies, whatever, I can still go back freelance and do a great job. It's the one thing that holds my financial mental health together. I know that no matter what, I can go back and make $150 an hour, right? No better first skill to learn.
Got it. Yes, I totally agree with that. And yes, that's what this channel is for, helping people get started with freelancing and hoping that they figure out what they want to do next, agency or their own proper business. But yes, I hope that you guys found this video helpful. This long ad, I think over an hour long episode helpful. There's probably not going to be any cuts also because it was just super smooth flowing, right? So yeah, thank you very much. It was just a very amazing conversation. Cannot wait to put this up on the channel. And if you have stuck till the end, Varun's YouTube channel, Varun's Instagram will be in the description below. Make sure that you do give him a follow, especially his YouTube content is super, super insightful. And one of my personal recommendations would be Varun's newsletter. It's a premium newsletter that I actually someone recommended
you can't actually buy it anymore.
Oh,
like I turned off payments for the newsletter because I'm like, this is going to be an exclusive club. Nobody else gets to join this club now. Like, people haven't recognized it. I'll probably announce it later. But yeah, you can't buy my newsletter anymore.
So, all right. So the links to the work that Varun has been doing, his newsletter will be in the description, but you guys cannot get it anymore, sadly. But the next time Varun is doing something, launching something, make sure that you get in first, because he is one of those men who just sticks to his word. And that is one of the things I admired so much about him. And yes, it was a delight talking to you. And I hope that we get to do something like this again in the future.
Thank you, Saheli.
All right. Bye-bye.